Helicopters? Sure, they're okay, but I wouldn't want one landing near my house.
Frankly, our whole check process and operation depends on helicopters. I don't think we could ever go back to surface transportation without having to charge our customers more for their banking services.
We've compromised so much on our ecology, banning helicopters from our cities might be a good way to cut down on the noise pollution.
You know, our helicopter patrol has been so successful, sometimes we get calls from people if we don't fly over their neighborhoods every evening.
No, I don't like those things flying around while they're liable to drop out of the sky on my house.
I've watched our city tax base shrink to about 1/3 of what it was 20 years ago. Business leaves the city because there's no fast way to move the goods or the people in this congestion. You bet I'm for helicopters and anything else that will help keep our city financially solvent.
6 people with different opinions about an issue which is being faced by many cities today. Like most issues, strong opinions are generated. Yet often, there is little objective discussion about the reality of this growing form of transportation. This film is an attempt to define the real issues, to put the helicopter in perspective with other forms of transportation, to see why the helicopter is already becoming a way of life for many American cities. And it's a trend that will affect most urban areas in the near future. There's no need to tell any city dweller about congestion. It's part of our daily lives. However, that very fact tends to make us accept the traffic-choked streets without realizing just how overcrowded most metropolitan areas are. For example, 70 years ago in New York, horse-drawn vehicles reached speeds over 10 miles per hour. Today, motor vehicle traffic in Manhattan averages only 8.5 miles per hour. Clearly, alternatives to surface transportation are needed and have been found in the helicopter. Everyone has seen helicopters, yet few people really understand how they work. Technically, they're known as rotary wing aircraft. The rotor system acts as a wing, providing lift. It is not just a large vertical propeller, but rather an aerodynamic shape, like an aircraft wing, designed to provide vertical lift. One of the unique features of helicopters concerns their safety in the event of engine failure. A helicopter can fly without power to a safe landing just using the energy of the windmilling rotor blade. Here's a good comparison. One helicopter is making a normal powered landing. The other, a landing with no engine power. It's pretty difficult to tell the difference. Historically, the first use of helicopters in cities was in emergency roles, helping police, firemen, and medical services provide the type of quick response that was needed in highly congested areas. Awareness of the helicopter's role in urban catastrophes isn't limited to our country. Here's an office building which burned in 1972 in Sao Paulo, Brazil. A total of 488 people trapped in the upper floors were rescued from the fire by helicopters. There was no other way to save their lives. It was a 4-hour operation using 11 different helicopters, but it changed the world's thinking about helicopters in disaster rescue. The result, a city ordinance which now requires that new buildings 10 stories or higher in Sao Paulo be equipped with a roof helipad. Many cities in the U.S. are adopting similar local ordinances. So, in a very real sense, the existence of modern cities with high-rise buildings and traffic-clogged streets make the helicopter a growing necessity. It has almost reached a point where you can't have large populated areas without also having helicopters. However, this acceptance of the helicopter in life-saving roles and for police surveillance is more palatable to many people than the use of the same equipment by business. Yet, the same factors have produced the same need. The crowded ground transportation system in most major cities makes movement as difficult for business as for the police. And it's often the most innovative, fastest growing, most competitive businesses which are the most helicopter dependent. The very corporations which are attractive to any community. A good example is Mack Trucks Incorporated. Here's Chairman of the Board and President, Henry J. Nave.
Mack is the largest exporter of heavy-duty diesel trucks in North America. As a matter of fact, we do business in over 75 countries, and therefore we have many international visitors here in Allentown. Because Allentown is about 90 miles from New York and about 60 miles from Philadelphia, the helicopters are indispensable in our way of doing business and in picking up these international visitors. We're extremely proud of the fact that the FAA has given us now a special routing for Mack helicopters into metropolitan New York, and we believe this is going to make us even more efficient than we have been in the past.
The departure of business from center city areas is a common phenomenon of this decade. The result is a loss of tax revenue for the city and a loss of employment opportunities for its citizens. So in the same way that helicopters make good sense in saving lives and preserving the health and property of the general public, they perform identical functions for business. They can keep a business vital and growing by moving men and equipment at the speed and efficiency which is demanded in today's marketplace in order to remain competitive. So banks have had to resort to pickup of checks by helicopter just to reduce their data processing overtime and the delays that are created by snarled evening rush hour traffic. The helicopter which lands briefly at a branch bank in Pennsylvania is actually helping to keep bank check clearing costs low. Moving people and parts between plants on regularly scheduled runs by helicopter is no longer considered a luxury. It's a vital part of corporate traffic. One company has accumulated over $40,000 flying in the congested Los Angeles basin. But the advantages of helicopters have not been without certain liabilities. Probably their biggest negative aspect, from the point of view of most people, is the fact that they are a new sound. We have all come to accept the sound of surface transportation such as cars, trucks, and buses. It's part of the background noise of a city. These sounds are essentially the same sound level as a turbine-powered helicopter landing or taking off. Yet, the fact that the helicopter is a different sound attracts our attention more than that of familiar surface traffic. It might be well to look at specific noise footprints, the area of ground covered by sound of a specific intensity. Here's the sound pattern of a conventional 4-engine jet transport. An audible path of about 20 miles length will be clearly apparent over the noise of ground traffic. In contrast, here's the sound footprint of a typical turbine-powered helicopter. Because of their ability to make steeper vertical approaches and their lower sound level, the noise path at a heliport can be reduced to as little as 600 feet, less than 0.5% of the area of noise associated with a conventional airport. Helicopter use in residential areas is not common in most communities. Yet there are places where this situation exists, some very nice places. Here's Mr. Holly at Boca Raton, Florida.
I've used helicopters for years in my business. When I moved here, I wanted the same convenience that I had in Chicago. But maybe I'm not the one to tell the story. This is Mike Sussick, my neighbor.
Hello, Harry.
Mike?
It's no secret. We were all a little curious when Harry started talking about landing his helicopter in his backyard. But you know, it's worked out amazingly well. I live next door, just over here. And quite frankly, I'm not conscious of when Harry takes off or comes in with his copter.
Such residential use is an extreme example. Most helicopter users are already clustered in land zoned for commercial or industrial use. And this means that the flight path of the helicopters will be primarily confined to areas that already have a greater noise level. So we find that helicopters are already part of urban life throughout the United States, because they do many jobs that can't be done by other forms of transportation. Yet, most cities are ill-prepared for proper helicopter utilization. Few cities have included heliports, or even helipads in their master plans. Ideally, to be responsive to public safety needs, civic heliports should be located strategically throughout a city. Emergency landing sites on building tops, ground-level locations along major traffic arteries, and near water recreation areas. In addition to these installations for civic use, business heliports should be located close to traffic-generating centers. This means financial centers, business districts, and at transportation terminals, so people can have efficient access to other forms of public and private transportation. A heli stop can be as simple as a turf surface, or it can be a larger paved area with floodlights and a beacon for round-the-clock use. Complete heliports exist with control towers and many landing pads for helicopters of different sizes. But whether simple or sophisticated, they are essential for the use of helicopters. They can range in cost from a few $100s to tens of thousands. But they do have to be designed, built, and identified, since without them, helicopters can't legally land in most cities. How to design and build heliports of various types has been well defined in this current Federal Aviation Administration guide. And many local and state governments have regulations which are applicable to such construction. The information is readily available. All it takes is the intent. So we've reached the crux of the helicopter use dialogue and find that the answers have to be hammered out by each locale according to the dictates of its citizens. Some cities will encourage the orderly development of helipads and heliports and thus include this innovative form of transport in their master planning. Other cities will decide to exclude such controlled helicopter use, will decide that technological progress has gone far enough. Today, everyone wants to be close to a wide, fast freeway, but not too close. Most of us don't want a long drive to get to the airport, but we would rather the aircraft fly over someone else's home. However, nobody likes the high taxes that exclusively residential communities have to pay. But without business, homeowners have to bear all the taxation. So, like all growth decisions, it's up to individual communities and the planning and zoning boards who represent the citizens. But ironically, not making a decision is in a very real sense the same as making a negative choice, because time inevitably makes the decision. Business and industry go where they are wanted. There are communities that aggressively seek controlled growth. There are cities with innovative master plans which strike the happy balance between civic good and individuality. So the next time you hear or see a helicopter, imagine what it might be doing and how that could affect your life, either directly or indirectly. And you decide whether you feel that your community should encourage their use.